This debate is indeed pivotal for us members of the European Parliament. We arrived at the European Parliament a few months ago, and we never thought we would be members of a commission that is now in charge of managing and that indeed has to manage one of the priority of the European Union and at the global level as well. When we reached the ENVI Commission and became members, we were told that in the tradition of this European Parliament, this commission was mainly focusing on environmental issues and that it was a rather secondary debate. The health issues were quite secondary. But through the pandemic, the commission was transformed, and we can now say that it is this the main commission of the European Parliament. Well, because indeed it's one of the main, a hot debate within the European Parliament, and it is, of course, one of the priorities of our institutions. We want to make progress on, well, decarbonization, for example, but one topic became more and more important within our committee, and that is, of course, the way the pandemic is being managed. We are therefore now forced to study, to analyze, talk to the experts, think together and make concrete proposals as a legislator, indeed, of the European Union. We have a big responsibility on our shoulders, all the members of the European Parliament, and especially the members of this health committee. I think we can call it this way. Maybe we should change the name of this committee, and instead of environmental, it would become the Health and Environmental Committee. And we are strongly convinced that it is paramount to accelerate the vaccination process at the global level. Many of the MEPs have been fighting hard over the past month, trying to work on very practical aspects of this struggle, which is the removal of patents. That's the topic we will deal with today, and we believe that indeed patents are one of the main obstacles in the way in order to truly accelerate the vaccination process at the global level. But we also know that there are many more questions to address and to debate over. We know, of course, that there are many technical obstacles, logistical obstacles, industrial obstacles on the way. And this is why we decided to organize this webinar in order to have a general, comprehensive look at the situation. That is the main purpose of this webinar, really. We want to listen to those experts that can explain to us the main obstacles to scale up the process. Well, nowadays, only 28% of the global population is fully vaccinated, and 13% of the global population has received the first jab. So clearly, this is a critical situation when you see that, a high 60% of the population doesn't have access to the vaccine. I will switch to Catalan, if you allow me. I will conclude my first intervention in Catalan.
In the least developed countries, less than 2% of people have been vaccinated in least developed countries. In rich countries, there are European countries with a vaccination rate above 70%. So this is very serious. We cannot witness this passively. This is such an inequality that reflects all the other inequalities that we are familiar with. So we cannot remain passive faced with such inequality in the vaccination rollout speed. It's really blatant. There's only one solution to the pandemic, which is a global victory. So you will not win the war against COVID-19 in each country. This is a collective battle, so to speak. So this needs to be sped up, the vaccination, especially in the poorer countries. So that's the question that we are asking here today. So it's a moral imperative. It's the right to life that has exactly the same value in the south and in the north. So this is an emergency. It's urgent to vaccinate the south so that we can save lives. But of course, the pandemic will not be over until we have vaccination rates that are much higher. And taking into account the Delta variant, we have to aim at 85% of vaccination rate globally. And we are far away from that rate. And by achieving that, the pandemic will not be over. We need to have that rate, 85%, both in the south and in the north. And I'm sure that this will be discussed and tackled by our dear panelists. And then there are economic and social reasons that force us to speed up the vaccination rollout. The inequality in vaccination rates is yet another expression of social and economic inequalities. And the pandemic is intensifying, multiplying the social and economic inequalities. Wealthy countries have invested billions in their public sector to basically dynamize their business fabric, to save jobs, social protection systems, whereas in southern countries, we have witnessed an increase in extreme poverty, something that is unprecedented in recent decades. In 2 years, we have an additional 100 people who live in extreme poverty. We're talking about an increase of 120 million people who now live in a situation of chronic hunger. So if we take the perspective of the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN, these global consensus to eradicate poverty, well, this is the most serious backlash in decades. So that's a reason in itself to speed up the vaccination efforts. What about the obstacles? I will only list them. We believe that one of the obstacles, not the only one, but one of the obstacles are IP laws and how IP, not what IP laws say, but how the TRIPS agreement is being applied. These IP law agreement from the World Trade Organization. And at the European Parliament, many EMPs have supported India's and South Africa's proposal of October 2020. We have been claiming the European Union for many months to go to the WTO and support that motion, that proposal, because compulsory licenses are not enough. That is not sufficient. We have to be able to lift the patents, all of them. And I think Dr. Raghavan will discuss this topic. It's a huge honor to have her with us this afternoon. I'm very grateful to the doctor for having accepted the invitation. She's a law professor at the Texas University, and she's an IP law expert, and how the IP system impacts the access to treatment and medication. Yet another barrier, that is a production barrier. Those who are against lifting the patents in parliamentary discussions or debates tell us that it would be to no avail to lift the patents, because after all, southern countries are not prepared to make use of that knowledge. They lack the industrial capacity to manufacture and produce vaccines. And we respond back with a question when they tell us that. How many northern industries a year and a half ago or 2 years ago had the capacity to produce mRNA vaccines? That's the question I respond back with every time, even to the president of the European Council. He was listening carefully, Mr. Charles Michel. So I asked him, Mr. Michel, tell me, how many European industrial sites were specialized in mRNA vaccine manufacturing? None. That is the answer, because that was a non-existing technology. So our industry has learned how to produce these vaccines. We're not talking about the vaccine research or development. No, we're talking about the production process. Why do we think that the European industries have learned to produce these new technologies in few months? And why do we presume that southern industries won't be able to learn? And to discuss this topic, we're very grateful to have, well, we're very grateful to Mr. Einekel. He is the Coordinator Policy Team Access Campaign Director. We have been able to listen to him at the Development Commission in some hearings, and we always agree with his approaches. Thank you very much.
És un gran honor. I acabo perquè ho estic...
It's a huge honor. And sorry, I'm coming to the end, but I'm taking up more time than I wanted. Another argument that we have to listen very carefully to when it comes to speeding up the rollout of a global vaccination effort. Logistics. It's true that southern health systems have fragile infrastructures, and especially with some vaccines that have to be preserved in an ultra frozen condition. Well, these are added difficulties in the distribution process for the health systems of many countries. We're all aware of that because sometimes those preconditions cannot be met. And of course, there was a scarcity in the past, and now with the pandemic, this has been aggravated. So, okay, which are the logistical needs that have to be identified and how to respond to them and meet them so that we can plan the vaccine distribution in the South? And to discuss this topic,
Gràcies a la Sara Schifling. Ella és experta.
We're very grateful to Sarah Schifling. She is an expert in supply chain management in terms of pharmaceutical products to the South. So that's the right voice, the voice that we needed to discuss this topic. And she works at the John Moores University in Liverpool. Thank you very much. So that's about it from my part. I just wanted to give you some background information about our interest and concern. We're very grateful to you for sharing your knowledge with us. And I'm sure that today's discussion will be food for thought for legislation proposals or resolutions or some kind of initiative at the European Parliament that will help us make headway in this front. Thank you very much. And I hand it over to Dr. Raghavan.